Hey guys, this is Gamer Cow showing a new record for MarisaLand Legacy. This is local recorded because I didn't actually do this on stream. I didn't really have time to, unfortunately. But yeah, MarisaLand Legacy. It's like Mario 1 with the level structure, but it also has the dragon coins basically from Mario World. It's got a P-Speed system like SMB3 and Mario World as well. Also kind of sets itself a bit differently that way. We'll go into that in just a sec. And yeah, there are 4 levels per world. There's a boss at the end of each world, as you'd expect. And yeah, it's just a nice, cutesy little platformer. But it's a lot harder than it looks for various reasons, as we'll go over. So, P-Speed. You can maintain your P-Speed a little bit. You see, I slowed down there just so I didn't fall into the pit immediately. You can actually maintain your P-Speed if you slowly, or carefully, I should say, pull backwards in the air. And P-Speed can build up over multiple platforms too. We actually saw that in the first level, but it's kind of impossible to go into that immediately because there's just way too much to look at in this first thing. Yeah, but long and short of it is that if you keep moving forwards, even as you run and jump, you'll actually be able to keep your P-Speed building up. It's like an invisible meter, like it is in SMW, I suppose. And you actually do get to see that. We'll see that a couple of times as we go through. It's mostly notable in later stages, but yeah. But just now it's more how can we run through the stages with the P-Speed going. Because the game is kind of really slow without it. It's the same general engine as New Super MarisaLand, but it's obviously in much better resolution here, so it's widescreen too, which makes it a lot easier to see what you're doing, and it plays a lot smoother, so it's much nicer to control that way. However, it still shares some of the problems with the engine and a lot of the enemies too. So you can see I slowed down a little bit there, but the P-Speed was still built up, so because I didn't pull back too far. Anyway, these are the bosses. We want to try and fire kill as many of these as possible, but there's no fire in World 1, so we have to just use the shells. And this is pretty much what you've got to do for the bosses we can't use fire for. And yeah, it's not really a lot to it. So, with that said, going into World 2, we're actually going to start seeing the power-ups now. So, this game has a heads toll system. It's a bit weird, but it's been the case for the original MarisaLand as well. So this is supposed to be a throwback type game, I suppose. So, you start off as small Marisa at 2 heads toll. There's that mushroom is a double height one, so yeah, you'll go from 3 to 6, or 4 to 8, etc. Or 2 to 4 even. At 3 heads toll, these cookie blocks here will become turn blocks from SMW. At 4 heads toll, they become regular bricks that you'll just break if you jump into them. At 6 here, you can see we have a fireball, which is just a straight shot. It doesn't arc along the ground, and that can make it a little bit tricky to handle in a stage like this. There is not a lot of RNG in this game, but this is definitely one of the biggest offenders of poor RNG in this game. These fairies, the cheap fairies, I don't know how I missed that jump, but whatever. These fish fairies come up randomly. They will always come left to right so long as you don't stop. They will go right to left if you do, which is kind of awkward, but yeah, they don't exactly come up at favorable angles most of the time. You're slightly faster than they are, and their movement, like where they come up off the screen, is just completely erratic. It's not always reactable, unfortunately. Luckily, there is a backup power up there, which we can use to get ourselves back on our feet here. And yeah, we want to be at this head height for as many bosses as possible. It's not feasible in every boss to do this, mostly because of the stages that precede it. Sometimes it's just slower to try and maintain this power-up. On average, you're going to save about 11 to 14 seconds, depending on what the environment is like, to actually use this weapon on the bosses. So where it's feasible, and it's feasible in half of the worlds at this point, not easy, but feasible, you do want to preserve your fire here. This is one of the worlds where it's clearly possible to do, so that is what we shall do. Yes, just a little hop through there. See, the stage has got spikes on it now. Woo! It takes about 15 fireballs to knock this guy out. We deliberately take the hit there because the next stage is much slower to do with the fire power up here. It's kind of like Mario in the sense of sometimes being big is a disadvantage, except it's exaggerated here because you are like several times your head height, not just double. Anyway, this P-speed is really hard to maintain. You see I had to pull back a lot, get onto the single tile block, and then run from there. It can be done very slightly faster than that, but it's still pretty tough to do. This is also surprisingly difficult. It's very easy to just like not jump far enough there. Not entirely sure what causes it, because it doesn't seem to be super consistent as to what actually makes the jump better or worse there, but oh well. This stage, I mess up. I jumped way too early there, so I had to improvise a bit there. You get your power up back in this stage. There is actually a small mushroom that would have gotten us to 4 heads tall if I, you know, picked it up beforehand. Which would have made this into a mega mushroom pretty much at 8, but we don't really get to see that because we're never aiming to get to that sort of head height. Though the stair climb there was actually really good. So I salvaged a bit of the time back on this one, but this is still pretty bad. Each in-game second is about 0.4 real seconds, and I lost about 7, 8 in-game seconds there off of the best I've done. Anyway, this stage, this was a big time save to go with. This one used to be the bane of my existence. It's really hard just to straight run through. These cloud platforms, they're like note blocks, except they are very picky as to whether or not they're going to kill your movement speed. But if you can jump off the ends of them, then it's fine, and if you can bounce off those fairies at the end instead of actually jumping off the clouds, then it's much easier to maintain your momentum, and you can just hold the jump button for it, so it's really good. Anyway, Castle 3 has got a bunch of Womp Fuzzies over here. This little jump here is surprisingly tricky to do, but it saves about 2.5 seconds to not have to wait on the fuzzies coming down. Very risky though, because you gotta just get that arc right. I think it was a little bit slow at the end of this boss because you want to be slightly further over. I think I was 1 bounce too far there, like too far to the left. I had to take 1 extra bounce, but that's fine. Not too bad overall, and we did manage to get through World 3 relatively okay. World 4. This is the hardest fire kill to maintain, because it is actually really hard to get through the second, like the third part of this stage with the fire intact. These pipes are also a little bit difficult to get into sometimes as well, so that could be a problem. A little bit of a strategy here, shooting this one beforehand, pull back just a little bit there and you can maintain your running speed if you're careful with it, and that just gets you to the end even quicker. So 4-2, I haven't really worked out exactly how to do 4-2 with fire, like the best way here. Again, it's the head height is very awkward compared to what I'd normally be going through here. Normally I'd be 3 heads tall at best and I could just like full jump over them, for example. Build up the P-speed going through here, which isn't really possible at 6. I think there is a way, but it's like extremely difficult to do. We also don't get to see the cool tech here anymore. When you are less than 6 heads tall, you can actually build up P-speed over the course of those falling platforms and actually manage to run off of the second one in order to get. It's where the time loss comes in there, because that stage is faster at 3 heads tall than it is at 6. Anyway, the only auto-scroller of the game, I don't even know. I have no excuse for that whatsoever. I was actually pretty disappointed with that, because that's a 14-second time swing in the next stage that I'm just not going to get now. But yeah, I think I started this bottom platform too fast, like too early, and so I didn't end up getting the positioning that I wanted for it to make that jump a bit easier. But hey, at least I've found out now that I cannot actually make the jump that I want to do there. Maybe if I duck jumped it would be fine, but yeah. Kind of dumb, but it is what it is. Maybe next time round that I do this, I'll actually be able to get the World 4 fire kill, and it'll be much nicer. But we gotta deal with what we've got. So this stage, there's a couple of scary sections in here. I mean, there's a single tile jump that's always kind of sketch, and there's a couple of duck jumps that you can do. That also looks pretty rough, but it's not that bad. That single tile is kind of annoying. If you're really light on the button press, you can actually avoid the spikes at the top and on the ceiling there, but I am not practiced enough at the moment to consistently get that, so I tried anyway because I did do a couple of those in my previous record, but it's fine. So yeah, if you can fire kill this one, it is so much nicer. You just get to avoid all of the chicanery over here. Equally, if I'd have kept my power up and actually been 4 heads tall here, would have been better for the next stage because I would have been in Mega Marisa mode for the next one, because you only get a double mushroom at the beginning of this next stage. So I would have actually been slightly better off, but we're gonna get fire again anyway. This is a world where there's just not really any point in trying to keep this. It is way too slow to try and maintain this through 5-2, so we don't even bother. That shot's actually surprisingly difficult to do. But, you know, having the extra power up here means I can take the hit deliberately so I can get P-Speed up here. Not exactly used to having P-Speed there, I've never really tried it before, so I'll have to do some practice on that because I think I could bounce off that fairy and maybe maintain the P-Speed the whole way through. That would be pretty cool, but I have not actually tried to do that yet. So 4-3 might have been the only true auto-scroller, but this is definitely a close second. There's not a lot you can do here. I jumped at that. I disagreed with the game quite vehemently there. It's actually pretty annoying too, because you want to tank that hit later on in the stage. So this is actually a time loss here, because you want to tank the hit here. Luckily, there's a backup that I've learned for Alice, since Alice can't actually take a hit there. But yeah, it slowed this last section down a lot. Because you want to tank a hit on the previous corridor, grab the mushroom, and then tank the hit as I did there to get through that better. So it's a little bit of a time sink. It's unfortunate, but it is what it is. Then on to 5-3. So here we'll see that the fireballs are actually random. The fire bars are on a global timer, but the fireballs are random here. They have a spawn when they're just off screen that works, and then like they're random after that. We'll best see it in the next stage, but it does make for some weird bits here. Like this looks really sketchy, jumping so far out and then going back on the platform, like drifting back to it. But it's honestly better to do that because you might get surprised by a fireball coming from below. Anyway, that was the best I've done that stage. Like, the middle section when you're crisscrossing between those two fireballs usually ends up going a bit slower than that, depending on the timing for them. I went for it. I was feeling a bit risky after losing time on the last one, so that was kind of whatever. Anyway, this stupid stage, this is probably the hardest one to get. There's a quick cycle that I'm trying to go for here that you really need to be, like, as fast as possible. You see, I barely made it there, and that was with dropping right in between the fire bars. It was kind of dumb. This staircase just doesn't work. You need to at least actually jump up it a little bit, because otherwise you're going to get hit by that fire bar if you try and run past it. This part is also terrible for RNG. I got kind of lucky here, I think. But yeah, it's pretty bad. Anyway, pay attention to the fireballs here. All of them spawn at the same time at the beginning, but now look, they're all in random spots. This affects a few places in the 5-3, 5-4 collectively that makes it pretty awkward. The end here is also kind of annoying. You really need to make sure you are 3 heads tall going out of this world, because the next stage is actually built for Mega Marisa, 8 heads tall, but you need fire because you can get fire and keep it through World 6. So you need to go into this stage at 3 heads tall so that this mushroom here gives you 6 and you can fire through this one. So we're in Ice World now. Unfortunately didn't quite get the jump there. Again, it's very, very precise to get the jump without it killing your momentum. Luckily you can slide and slide jump off of the hills as a backup P-speed strat. Just a little bit of caution here so I don't get killed. And yeah, this section didn't go too well either because I got clipped on the block here. I needed to pull back slightly. Not my finest outing on that stage. There's still plenty of time that I need to save here, but it was fine. Could have gone a lot worse. Could have taken a hit and then I would have had to recover it in this stage. Speaking of this stage, I need to actually study this particular run from this stage because I kind of just did stuff here. I did not realize you could full jump to that. That was more an experiment than anything. But that helps preserve P-speed a lot better than what I've been trying to do in this one. So I need to actually learn that rather than just improvise it. And yeah, this actually ended up being quite a good goal split too. I was not by a huge amount, but like it definitely saved time there. So if you liked 2-2, you liked the first fish stage, you'll love this one. You can see just how sporadic these things are now. There's still some time to save in this one as well. This stage is very difficult to actually do well because it's ice physics on top of the fact that you can just get fairies like that just spawn right underneath you. And like their angle is weird, their initial position on the screen is random, how far across they'll go is random. It's all terrible. But I mean, stage went pretty well, so what can you say? And now for the castle, because we do have our power up here, we need to duck jump in order to not get caught there, which is fine. Now we'll just get our P-speed built up again. Small jump, full jump, hit thing here. You can apparently go under that one. I did not realize that. That was cool. I go under that one when I'm like 2 heads tall or something, but not when I'm 6. I didn't think I was going to make that, but you know. Realistically, what you're supposed to do is like full jump, small jump, and then you jump up the stairs while shooting the fire thing. I did get the jump that I wanted to go up the stairs, but it wasn't the way that I wanted to get it, if that makes sense. Kind of messed up my jump ordering, basically. Anyway, going into World 7, this world is really hard. Probably the hardest world overall. We're not going to be keeping fire throughout this whole thing, because again, it's just too slow. You actually can get fire back in 7.4, but it's actively slower to do it than it is to just do the stage beforehand. Anyway, we're holding the jump button down here so I can actually build up the P-speed on the platforms. I mentioned that earlier on, that's the application for it. Slight pullbacks here so that I don't run off the edge. It's very easy to just fall off the edge of platforms if you try and jump too far over. This game doesn't really subscribe to the coyote time thing that you'll find in most platformers where you can jump slightly off the edge. Doesn't seem to work in this game, so it's a little bit awkward. Anyway, 7-2, a little bit of a tricky stage. I did end up messing up the P-speed there, unfortunately, and run straight into the cannon there as well. It is what it is. So it's not the fastest stage by any means. You can keep P-speed a lot better than I did. This is the final hit that we will take in the whole game. Otherwise you've got to wait for those swamps to come down. You cannot actually just bounce off them until they are at ground level, because you will just bounce into the spikes. So yeah, that's our final power-up. We're going to be a whole way through from the rest here, and oh my god, this stage is nightmare. So I mentioned, like, jumping off the edge of platforms is tricky, right? This stage is literally just jump off the edge of platforms. It's all single tile stuff, and it's very, very difficult to do. Doesn't matter how many times I practice this. This actually went very, very well. I even got that, which is not exactly too easy. I messed up the end, unfortunately. But yeah, that is a very delicate balance of like not holding the jump button so you can go down underneath the ceiling girders, and then holding it at just the right time so that you land on the cannon and not fall just before it. Very, very tricky to do. Anyway, 7-4 is... I mean, these I haven't even mentioned the fairies coming out of the cannons here. They are also RNG, but they are the same as the fireballs, right? They shoot from a set off-screen distance, and then it's random when they come out next. That should never happen. This stage is usually an autopilot, and I just completely flubbed it. This is the reason I am so sad, because this cost about 24 seconds, and honestly, this would have been a ridiculously good PB and world record at that, but the grind continues. So you're supposed to do a full jump there, basically, land on the ferry and then do the jump from there. I do not know what I was thinking with it otherwise. Anyway, this is another good example. There are actually cannons off screen that are shooting these ferries, and you can see the sporadic pattern here. You can actually lose like 2 or 3 seconds depending on this final pattern here. It was very good this time, but you can actually lose a decent chunk of time to RNG there. It's possible to like catch the ferry that's at the bottom, you know, like hit it away so that you can actually jump and hit the fuzzy at the fastest time, but you know, pretty tricky to do. Anyway, well, you jump under that one. Gotta go second for platform here. There's you cannot go second to fourth, so don't even try it. This bit here, you need to very precisely land on that left block in order to skip the cycle. If you don't land on that left block, you're gonna have to wait. Nobody likes waiting, right? Don't let go of that fuzzy too high, because he'll click through the wall and you'll have to wait a bit longer. So, you know, a little bit of advice for that, I guess. Then this last bit, we're just running up to get P-Speed. Normally you don't want to run up and down hills, but if you've not got P-Speed yet, then it's still faster to get it set up like that, you know? So yeah, that is what it is. Now we get into 8-2, which is cannon time. This stage looks really, really scary, and it is pretty scary, but there is a set way of doing this to get P-Speed for it. It's pretty particular. You don't want to hold the jump button there. You do want to hold it down here. I thought I jumped too early. That was very, very sketchy. And then this last bit here, you jump on the third one, the fifth one. You're supposed to, as you do, land on the cannon at the top, and it's all good. Like, it's something you need to practice, but it is definitely something which is doable, and that's the main thing for it. 8-3 kind of emulates 8-3 from the original SMB1 with the hammer fairies over here. There's actually power-ups in these as well, so jump with momentum there, you can bounce on top of the fuzzy. If you just try and jump straight at it, then it will collide with you, but if you've got some momentum, just like in Mario, you jump a bit higher, so it all works out. And then we just get P-Speed at the end here, and we are good to go. Now, unfortunately, 8-4 has this annoying bit at the very beginning with the hammer fairies that if they move in just the wrong way, the second one will hit you no matter what. It just depends on where the sunflower comes in. Fun fact, my fan game marathon run actually was pretty decent up until there, where I died twice because of RNG, and it was pretty sad. Anyway, you stop here so that you can get the cycle fine with the juggling fairies there. Like, it's faster to stop and rebuild the P-Speed up. There is a mushroom that you can get for safety just before you go into this boss, but that takes about a second up. We ain't got time for that. Come on, we've got just 6 seconds of time save here, so, you know, gotta just go. And yeah, don't get sniped at the end, obviously, and you are good to go. So yeah, 23:36. Should have been 23:14 or 23:12 even, but you know, it is what it is. Anyway, apparently Marisa's canonical height is 5 heads tall, which you cannot get to with the mushrooms in games. That's what she's going for here, I guess. That's the story of the game, basically. Mushroom exploded in her face at the start, made her very small, and she looks to get her original height back, I guess. I don't know. Yeah, this game's fun. It's just, it's a little bit tricky to control at times, because, like, it's kind of very stop and start, I guess, is the easy way of putting it. But, yeah, it's still very fun to do, and speedrun is neat. That's the main thing for it. You can play as Alice as well, who can't take any hits, but does have a hammer, a light thing to make the bosses easier. But that's pretty much it. Thank you for watching, and next time it'll be a much better run, hopefully, because that one death is gonna niggle at me for a long time to come.